Africa Science Dialogue. We bust the myths. Facts call us home.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Africa Science Dialogue. I'm your host, Bibiana Iraki. Today we have a truly fascinating and important topic, one that we love to hate, one that has sparked quite a bit of debate lately in Kenya and in a number of African countries. We'll be diving into the world of crop protection products and their role in food production. So asking ourselves, are they essential for ensuring food security, or do they pose more risks than benefits? Do we need them at all? And to help us explore this very important issue, we have with us two expert panelists joining us. They're going to be bringing a wealth of knowledge and insights. And as is the nature with the Africa Science Dialogue, we don't like to tell you about who our experts are and read all these fancy bios. We're more into wanting to hear from them and their journey into the area of expertise. And so I'm going to start with the lady to my right, Dr. Doreen Matara. Dr. Doreen, if you can introduce yourself and tell us what it is you do and how you got there. Karibu.
Thank you so much, Bibiana. As you heard, Dr. Doreen Matara. I am a pharmacist and a toxicologist. A pharmacist, I work with human medicine, and toxicologist, I try and check whether substances, chemicals are poisonous or harmful to humans and sometimes environment and non-targets.
When you say non-targets, and another thing we're going to do is really try to break things down for our audience. When you say non-targets, what does that mean?
Non-targets are those animals, small animals, which were not really meant to be affected by a chemical, but they get themselves on the way. Maybe animals in the soil or in the environment out there in the air, like bees, or fish in the lakes. Yeah, so basically I get excited working around poisons, discovering their harmful effects and trying to see how to mitigate that.
I've never met anybody who gets excited around poisons. That's really interesting. But you say toxicologist, and you know when you talk about toxicology and as a toxicologist, it's a very specialized area of science and one that I'm sure people are not very familiar about. Very briefly, your journey into that area. What is it that, did you go to school to study toxicology, or how exactly did you find yourself in this space?
Interesting. So my first degree is pharmacy, and of course, pharmacy deals with human medicine. And I realized that among the drugs that we take, some of them, if taken in high doses, can be harmful. And this is what enticed me to go into checking exactly how poisonous can things be, can substances which are sometimes safe for consumption be. And so that landed me into toxicology, which is basically a scientist trying to evaluate chemicals and substances that can be harmful to humans. Yes.
Fascinating. All right. Benson Gigi, tell us your area of expertise, what it is you do, and how you landed there.
Yeah, thanks, Bibiana. It's a pleasure to be hosted today in the African Science Dialogue. For the audience, as she said, my name is Benson Gige. I am an agronomist by training, meaning I studied agriculture and the art of growing food.
Fantastic.
I furthered education in crop protection, which is a kind of a specialty within the agricultural field. And I think I found it fascinating working with the pests and diseases so that we can see how to better protect something that we have grown from a seed to the final yield. Yeah, so there was kind of a fascination. From the options that were available, I saw that one as the most
The most
Intriguing
viable option.
intriguing for
And
me.
that's what you wanted to do growing up, or did you just stumble into this area of
Okay.
agronomy?
With the Kenyan education system, sometimes you don't really get what you wanted.
Yes.
I wanted to be a vet doctor, but agriculture was close enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a blessing. It's
Yes,
a blessing.
yes.
You know, you're still within the area of science, but looking and zeroing in on how we protect our crops and get the maximum yield out of.
Yes.
Fantastic. So,
Yeah. So my journey after college, I've worked both in the public and private sector.
Okay.
Immediately after college, I worked in the Ministry of Agriculture, in extension specifically.
fantastic.
Yeah,
When extension
so-
was extension.
Yes, when extension was extension.
Those days.
In the grassroots there with the farmers, implementing various projects that were targeting the farmer.
Right.
So in extension, you tend to become a jack of all trades, but luckily I also got to be a
master of one.
in, in
like
crop
that.
protection.
Yeah.
So after about 10 years in government, I switched to private sector, where I now work with AAK Grow, also known as Crop Life Kenya, as the stewardship manager.
All right.
Yeah.
What does a stewardship manager do?
Yes, stewardship as the
What
name.
is this word stewardship? Right.
Yeah, you'll hear it in church. You'll hear it in
Bible. We were called to be good
stewards.
stewards.
Yes,
right?
yeah. So basically, you act like a guide,
Okay.
so that you direct the people, in this case, the farmers. You steward them towards the responsible use of the crop protection products, giving them the straight and narrow, and it's working out quite well in most areas. Yeah.
All right, good. Crop protection products. Yeah. The word or thing that we love to hate. And I think maybe a lot of times because of not very sufficient information on their use, etc., and why they are important. So just to really kick off this discussion, let's start at the foundational level on why crop protection products. And when you talk about crop protection products, we're also talking about pesticides, right?
Yes, yeah.
Why?
They are synonymous.
They are synonymous.
Yes.
One and the same. Potato.
Yes. Yeah.
Why are they important?
Okay, when you look at the balance in nature, there is always good things that we like, in the same way that out there are crops that we eat and there are crops that are just there, maybe some without even purpose. But when you also look at the nature of agriculture, when you're producing the crop you are producing is also food for another insect, another animal out there. So if you want to really get 100% or as close to 100% of the yield from that crop, you need to keep away that harmful pest that is out there. So it can be as big as a cow. It can be as minute as a fungus or a virus. So all those things will attack your crop. And looking at the nature of agriculture, it is becoming more commercial. We need more crop production area to satisfy the growing population, so their food demands are growing higher. So when you look at, let's say, a century ago, we used to do some farming just behind your house to keep you for the year until the next harvest. But nowadays it's getting more commercial.
Yes.
And for you to achieve that optimum production for maximum income and maximum quality, you really need to take care of that pest or that disease that is affecting you as a farmer. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, there are proponents of climate change. There are those who can see it. There are those who probably are not as much affected. So when you look at that, there's some shift in the environment. Some pests that were, or some insects, or some diseases that were not of concern, maybe even as recently as 10 years ago. Due to the changes in the environment, they've become more active.
Right.
They increase their population much faster.
Okay.
So if you just assume them, you might just end up
with
zero yield from your farm.
Yes.
And here we find the scientists developing very good seeds that will maybe give you double of what you would have gotten 20, 30 years ago.
Okay.
But if you don't take an effort to protect
your crop.
your crops, you'll find that you don't get that.
Is a pest control product, so pesticides, the only viable way to protect our crops? Are they necessary? Can we do without them?
Okay, definitely they're not the only option available to the farmer. In terms of efficacy, they are the most efficacious, or they are the
efficacious. These words.
No, okay. To be put it simply,
yes,
you'll get the quickest and best results using the crop protection products.
Okay.
But if a farmer uses some other knowledge and some other practices, then it's very possible to also get a yield, but not compared to what you would get if they used pesticides. On the flip side of that, or on the other side, is that if you combine the two, the non-chemical options or the non-chemical approaches and the chemical, you tend to get now better sustainability from agriculture. So if you rely on crop protection products exclusively, then there's a downside to that. Yeah.
So you're saying it's not a one size. It's not a silver bullet.
Yes, exactly.
To our food production challenges.
Yes.
No wonder they call you a steward.
Yes.
But having had you say this, we've seen a lot of uncertainty from public and a lot of debate about the use of pesticides, and this conversation has become really, really polarized, right? Doreen, from where you sit, why do you think this is the case? Why is the debate on pesticides, from your opinion, very polarized?
Of course, I've had these debates, and the reason why it's polarized is because some of us are on one side trying to, get good yield from the farm and sustain our people. The demand is high, as he said. And there are other people who think this pesticide might be causing harmful effects from them, to the environment, to the people who are consuming the food. And so we have two kind of people struggling.
Yes.
And that's why we have the debates
around.
Yes. But in my opinion, there's always a truth in between. We get to meet somewhere.
I love that.
And the scientists and the food protection officers will show us the advantage and disadvantage, and we will have to choose what exactly we can do to be safe and also to use those pesticides in a safe way.
Yes.
In an example now is the pesticides that we have. For a country like Kenya to let in pesticides, this pesticide must be approved by regulators. They also must be safe for use. That means they've been tested over and over by the manufacturers.
Yes.
We don't manufacture them in Kenya. So when they come, they've been tested. And there's some tests that we normally do so that we are able to ascertain that this pesticide that I'm using is safe.
So what I'm hearing you say is you don't just take what is given or coming in from the outside, that we have our own internal systems to confirm or ascertain that what we are putting in our market is safe.
That is true.
Okay.
We have a regulatory body, PCPB.
PCPB, what does PCPB stand for those?
All right, that is
Pest Control
Products Board. Pest Control Product Board.
It's established under the Pest Control Product Act.
Okay.
And it is the primary regulator for pesticides. It is normally involved in the registration of the pesticide, the importation, exportation, distribution, even use and disposal.
Wow, okay.
So all these processes of a pesticide, from registration to use and disposal, are
taken care of.
Yes.
Okay. And how do you then, as toxicologists, work with this regulatory body to assure safety of the pesticides? Where do you come in?
All right. Where we come in is to assess the pesticides. And there are some tests that we do for assessment as toxicologists. For example, there are acute toxicological studies. Allow me to explain a little what it means. So acute toxicological studies are normally done to every pesticide.
Okay.
And these are short-term studies that are supposed to ensure that in taking injection, that's taking, or when the pesticide is exposed to the skin or maybe inhaled, it will not cause any harmful effects.
Okay.
These studies are done in animals first, extrapolated to human beings.
Extrapolate.
Like
People will need a dictionary. But yes.
like the studies in animals
Yes.
are, what is the best term for extrapolation?
Compared.
Yes,
Okay.
compared to human beings in different doses. And when it is found that there is no acute toxicity, then we basically will unanimously say this pesticide is not hazardous. We further on go into other studies called chronic toxicology tests. These tests are long-term tests that are supposed to assess whether this pesticide will cause harmful effects to certain organs and body parts.
Okay.
For example, there is a test on pesticide to check whether it will cause cancer, a carcinogenic test. That's what we call it.
Okay.
So the pesticide will be tested whether it has any capability of causing cancer, of causing effects to the immune system, or immune system is the one that protects us from diseases. The neurological system, that's the brain, all the brain. And also tests are done to ascertain that these pests will not cause any harmful effects to babies, which are born or unborn, and also pregnant mothers. Yeah, so all these tests are supposed to ensure that this pesticide which comes into the market is actually safe. There are other two more, which is the acceptable daily intakes.
Okay.
This is a study which is done on the pesticide to ensure that at least when a level of intake, of a daily intake is taken to human beings, let me just say, when pesticides are used, normally there are levels which are acceptable for intake.
Yes.
So
not that people should try.
Yes.
The steward is looking at us like,
that is true. That is
but
true.
I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. So the acceptable levels have to be established.
Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
as if a little bit of it is taken, it's not harmful. But to levels where it is harmful, then it's we put a mark on there.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think I'm thinking about what your average person on the street would understand this. When we even look at, I think, vitamins.
Yes.
You're told that there's your daily average sort of intake
requirement
that you can take, and the safety levels, and above which
it's harmful.
It becomes harmful.
The best example is vitamin C.
Yes.
If you take it beyond a certain, let's say, I don't have the exact figures, but if you, let's say, take 5 oranges, believe you me, you'll have a running stomach because it's vitamin C poisoning in quotes.
Yeah, that's
okay.
There are more studies also done to check whether the pesticides will be harmful to the environment.
Yes.
Will they be environmentally safe? So these are done to check whether the pesticide will affect the other ecological systems, like will the pesticide, when running into water, of course a bit of it will be running into water, will they affect the fish? Will they affect the soil health?
So the non-targets that you are talking about,
the non-targets, yes.
Okay.
So studies are also done. We have to check whether these will also, the pesticide will also affect these. And lastly, there are standards that also we have to put on this pesticide, and that is the maximum residue limits.
Okay.
They are put in place to ensure that this pesticide, as they are being used, there are levels to which they cannot be exceeded.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, You're really regulated.
Yes, I was about to tell you that.
You're really regulated. So I'm curious to hear from your, perspective or your point of view, how that process is, and what it is that you go through to put a pesticide on the market.
Yes, I think maybe apart from one or two other illegal substances, the pesticides are the most regulated substances across the world.
Okay.
Maybe a few other chemicals might surpass us, but when you look at the process between the research and development and getting it to the shelf of the retailer, it's one of the most stringent processes that you can ever undergo. So you'll notice that maybe apart from pyrethrum-based crop protection products, all the others are imported from Europe, Asia, and the Americas. So that's where the most of the production takes place. So let's say, for example, any of our listeners would like to have a product registered in Kenya. There's a very strict process that they have to follow through. As Dr. Doreen has said, it's stipulated in the Pest Control Products Act.
Okay.
So you'll go out there, maybe as a businessman, you'll find out there's a product that I would like to start trading in Kenya. You'll have to visit the Pest Control Products Board, declare your intention that you want to start trading in product X. I'll source it from market Y, and give a few details of where you are sourcing it from. So after the PCPB have evaluated that, they look at your paperwork, they'll ask for more information now on that particular product. It has to be registered in the country that you want to import it from, because there is kind of recognition if from those, let me call them advanced countries, because they have that capability of manufacturing. If it's registered in that country, it means it has met some international best practices. So after they have looked and seen that it's registered in that country, they'll ask for now paperwork, what is technically called dossier. So they'll want to look at what are a few of the things that Dr. Doreen has mentioned. About. Yes, what is its physical properties? Is it a gas? Is it a solid? Is it a liquid? How does it behave when exposed to air? They look at the chemical properties. How toxic is it? Because all substances undergo certain processes, and you can tell this is a very toxic. Even a gram of it might cause death. Or it's a very safe product. All that will be in the paperwork. They'll also look at the environmental fate. How does it behave when it is released into the environment? Does it break down in a day? Does it break down in a year? Does it break down in 10 years? So all that will be given in the paperwork. They'll also look at its toxicological properties. What level of poison, so to speak, is in the substance? Then they'll also look at how good is it at killing the pest that you want the target pest. So there's a threshold for acceptability. If it is below a certain percentage, it cannot be accepted. Because apart from having it as a pest control product, you also have to have some economies of scale.
Absolutely.
Yes. So you can't work with a product that works at 50%. It has to be maybe somewhere close to 80 and above. So that even if it's traded, the final results are acceptable by the farmer or whoever wants to use it.
Some money sense.
Yes. So after they've looked at that paperwork, you'll be given a permit to import for trials now. So yes.
So you have to do a trial first.
Trial, yes. They've looked at the paperwork, it makes sense. The lab where it is produced, there's what are known as good lab practices globally. And you cannot just get that certificate from any laboratory. It has to be a GLP certified laboratory. And there's a trust system within the global network that there's trust that if a certain lab says this, it is acceptable globally. And checks and audits are done to ensure that they maintain that trust. So after that section, now you are given the temporary permit to import small quantities to try it now. Let's say, for example, you want to use it on coffee, for example. So you'll import it. You have to identify an institution that has been accredited or given a license by PCPB to conduct trials in coffee. It's that specific. So you'll give them your product, they'll go and try out the dosage rates.
Okay.
Maybe let's say just out
When you
of
say dosage rates, what does that mean?
the quantity that you'll apply per unit area or per unit of water.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, a product, you'll say they'll test it at 5 grams, 10 grams, 50 grams, so on and so forth.
Okay.
They have the procedures which they use to determine now the best that balances killing the pest and also
the
not
economy.
not having residues, and also the economy. So you see, they look at it from so many angles before they give it the go ahead. So if your product passes that test, it's a confidential report given by the institution that you have given that task.
So you're not even meddling in that?
No.
Okay.
You just give
You
them
give and step
back.
Okay.
So you just pay, or you just finance the process.
Okay.
And then they'll write a confidential report to PCPB.
Okay.
Giving all the results, giving the fate in the soil, the fate on the pest, the fate in the produce, be it the fruits or the leaves or the roots. They'll give the fate of that particular product to PCPB, which now they'll evaluate, compare with what you had given earlier. And then if it passes, it goes now through, if it passes through a technical committee that involves the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Agriculture, a few scientists from within the board. And then if they are satisfied that that product meets all the requirements, now it is given a certificate of registration.
Right.
Now from there, you can import the product.
You can import the product.
But you have to get a permit every time you're importing.
Okay,
it's not that
I take blank check.
No.
Right.
Every
so
time.
they keep following
up. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask this question because I know how we are as a people. I don't want to leave anything hanging. You said that you pay for the test to be done.
Yes.
The concern, I think, always with the public is he who pays the
Piper.
does what? What's your take on that? How can the public then trust that if you're paying for the process then that you're not interfering or meddling with the results?
Okay. Yeah, maybe the payment looks like, what can I say? Okay, let me put it this way.
Okay.
The same way that you pay school fees for the teacher to teach your child is the same way that you pay PCPB on the accreditation institution to conduct trials on your behalf.
Okay.
You're just facilitating the process, but not involved in the process in any way.
Okay.
So it's just facilitating the process. Yeah, it's not paying for the...
It's not saying, hey,
get this amount of money. No, all those charges are, in fact, in schedules.
Okay, and that goes to PCPB.
PCPB, yes.
It's not to the people doing the test.
This happens
Very
also
important.
in drugs.
In drugs.
In
Pharmaceutical
human drugs.
drugs.
Pharmaceutical
And you see,
drugs.
those are the parallels that I think the public needs to understand to begin to maybe address or remove some of those background conversations we have about paying and who.
Yes.
So that's interesting to hear.
Yes.
That it's a similar process in drugs, but more acceptable there
Yes.
than people would want to accept when it comes
So
to.
you're just facilitating the process, the costs involved, because you can imagine you have to set up, in most of the circumstances, you have to do the trials of a minimum of 2 seasons.
Okay.
And in what are known as agroecological zones, it means areas that have different climates.
Right.
So you can do it in the highlands and in the lowlands.
Okay.
Or in the coastal area and in the highlands. You know, I think we have not less than 4 agroecological zones in Kenya. There are many more.
Okay.
So you have to choose at least 2.
Okay.
So that you can see, let's say, for example, in the coast, it's a bit hot and humid. But in the highlands, it's cold and wet.
Right.
So you see the temperatures and the humidity have an effect on how the chemical will work. So you have to look at all those 2.
Okay.
So minimum is 2.
Okay.
So all those aspects looked into, you have to plant the crop, have someone do the necessary practices.
I agree.
Do the application,
and why should the
lab
cost be
tests.
on me as a taxpayer if PCPB, for instance, had to do that, yet you're the one who wants to bring the product to the market.
Yes, yeah.
You facilitate
The
the
process.
regulator and the process, and if they then are certain that it is safe and
Yes.
we trust whatever it is in what you call the dossier,
Yes.
then we give you the license
permission.
and the permission to bring
Bring
the
in
product. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after you've gotten it, as I was saying, every time you want to import, you have to get the go ahead.
Okay.
Because of several issues, they have to maintain. They have to be sure that it's from the same source that you declared at the beginning.
Okay.
They have also to look at the quantities so that you don't bring in too much which will expire within the country. So it acts as a check and balance to avoid some issues that may arise a bit later. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You also said something. I want to address pink elephants in the room. Oh my gosh, you would not be able to finish them at least within this sitting. But let's at least talk about, touch on some of them. You said a lot of the products you import come in from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's this issue of double standards that we've been hearing. And what then that means, or what the public is concerned about, is that there are pesticides that are banned for use in the European Union. And allegedly, they say it's because of their risks to health and the environment, but then they still continue to be sold in the Kenyan market. Please help us shed some light on this and understand what is that and what is that double standard issue. Yes.
Okay, I'll start by putting it that every jurisdiction has the leeway or the option of choosing what they want into their country and what they don't want into their country. Overall, there's global bodies, the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, among others, and also some conventions, what are known as multilateral agreements, whereby the countries come together and they say, yes, these are chemicals, they are products. You can only trade in them in such and such a way. So there's a global kind of oversight on chemicals. But now Europe has that option of saying, we don't want X, Y, Z, because they have gone ahead and set standards that Dr. Doreen talked about of residues. They have put them much lower than what is globally accepted.
So they've taken a precautionary approach.
Yes. In fact, it's not highly precautionary approach.
And they can afford to.
Yeah, they can afford to. And sometimes it also looks suspect, the motives behind putting in those precautionary effects, because the World Health Organization has said that at this level, even if you take those very minute remnants, divide a gram by 1,000, and then you are talking about such levels. So it's not even a pinch of salt. It's much lower. So they've said if that is remaining in your food, that is not likely to cause
harmful.
It's not harmful.
And that level they've put is much higher. They've maybe doubled whatever they found times 10. So it's very minimal. So if Europe goes ahead and said they are more or less approaching, they don't want any residues in their food, of which it has been established that certain levels have no harm over a lifetime. Yes. So that is their option. They have said we don't want to accept that. But the rest of the world is still using these products. Go to Asia, go to Europe, come to Africa, even our neighbors. As long as they're used within the set parameters, then it's still safe to use this product. But the debate becomes a bit tough because when you look at, for example, our horticulture sector, the EU is our main market.
It's the main market.
We kind of feel it.
So those residue levels that Dr. Doreen was talking about.
Yes. Yeah, so because Europe is our main market, we tend to feel, as the saying goes, if it used to be the US, but now it's Europe. If they sneeze, we catch a cold. So that is what exactly is happening. And when you look at this kind of climate that is there in Europe, they can probably afford to also not use some of these products. Winter tends to break the life cycle of some of the pests. They cannot survive there. Come to Africa, the life cycle even becomes shorter. Instead of maybe procreating or reproducing in 2 months, in Kenya, you might find in 3 weeks the life cycle is complete.
Conducive environment
for the pests. So you see, we are living in two different worlds.
Yeah. And so our decisions have to be informed
by our
own unique challenges.
Situations, yes.
And if that was true, that those pesticides are banned there, the European people could not be consuming our exports to those countries.
Yes.
Because some of our exports actually go there, and they are within the acceptable limits, the residues, and they are our great, a great market is there. So if they didn't accept these pesticides, then they couldn't have accepted
the
our
export market would be completely shut down. But that's still operating, as we know.
Yeah, it's still operating under some stringent oversight.
Yes.
Which now, for some who might have a third eye, they look like technical barriers to trade. Yeah.
So a whole podcast conversation on that, I think we need to have.
So that is why you'll find that they have, as themselves, agreed or decided to ban some of those products.
But are these products still registered?
Important. Yes,
that's the important.
Some are still registered,
approved,
but they don't use them.
They just don't. They have the luxury. I think
of choosing.
I read a quote. I don't remember. Someone was saying, if you have the luxury to eat red meat, white meat, or any color of meat, do not come in the way of people who are simply asking to have a meal.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Yeah,
you can. They're two totally different scenarios. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's been a lot of push of having a blanket ban on crop protection products and pesticides in Kenya from those conversations about they are not being used there. And so what would the impact of us banning these things in Kenya be? Or in Africa in general?
Yeah, we have a very good example in Sri Lanka.
Okay, let's use tangible examples. I like that.
A few years ago, their government decided all of a sudden, without any measures put in place to transition, they decided from 1st January, I'm using just an example.
Let's call a spade a spade.
Yes. They decided from 1st of this month, we are no longer using chemical fertilizers or chemical pesticides.
Yes.
And unlucky for them, they had to endure 2 years of famine. The economy was really struck very hard because, one, the population is not well fed.
Yes.
You have to use a lot of forex to import food. Or you can obviously look at the of the effects, health-related diseases, which are health-related diseases.
Okay.
Malnutrition, the kwashiorkor, the rickets, and the kind of nutritional-related diseases.
Yes.
Yeah, so that kind of approach would not be very good to take, especially as a developing country or a low economy country. So, in my opinion, the best thing would be to ensure that whatever we have that is in our country is being used in the correct way.
Okay.
So that we can be able to bring in aspects that I mentioned earlier of other options of pest management that the farmers used to use even since agriculture started.
Right.
Some are newer. We have biological options. Biological options means using either another animal or another insect or another organism to balance out what is harmful.
Okay.
So you can maybe...
So is that what is called integrated approach?
Yes, integrated pest management. So you can use physical methods like the greenhouse to keep away the pest.
Yes.
You can bring in another insect to eat the insect that is of concern to you.
Okay.
You can use extracts, or you can, for lack of a better word, you can harvest some components of another plant to fight the pest or disease in the plant of interest or in the crop that you're interested in.
Okay.
So you see, they tend to have very low toxicity. They are neutral to the environment. They don't harm the non-target organisms. So there are those options that are there.
Okay.
There's also things like intercropping, proper tillage. There's a whole variety of options that the farmers can use. And that is what we are advocating for, so that when you combine all these options, there's sustainability.
Okay.
Yeah, and
okay.
the environment is also
and
protected.
the environment is, and are these some of the things, even as you do your toxicological assessments, when you're looking at the environment impact on health, are those some of the factors you consider or suggest in terms of use integrated approaches? Or
Yeah, of course, when we look at pesticides alone, it cannot be them being used without anything else.
Okay.
There are other methods that he has mentioned that can come in to supplement the pesticides and give a good outcome.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe to take us a little back. I'm looking at Kenya going the Sri Lanka way.
Yes.
What will happen?
What would happen?
Now, number one, the population in Kenya is growing. Yes. The food demand is very, very high. If we went the Sri Lanka way of banning pesticides, we will not meet our food demand.
Absolutely.
And our yields will go low. The productivity will be way too low. Remember, we are a country who are relying on export of horticultural.
Yes.
That will affect our exports completely. So that is our economy crumbling down. And the nutritional effects also come in, as he said. You know, there are crops in Kenya which you cannot grow without pesticides. And those are the essential food crops to our health. The likes of fruits and vegetables, very prone to pests, and they cannot grow and get anything out of it without using pesticides. So if we tried to go this way, the cost of living, I'm sure, will go.
We are
very
complaining,
high.
but we should prepare for tougher times if that's an approach.
Yeah, but as you said, as we use pesticides rationally, like according to the required standard, with other methods also, we are able to sustain our demand, and there is food security.
Yeah, Bibiana, maybe I can also add to what Dr. Doreen is saying. Yeah. We have a report on our website, aakgrow.com. It was launched last month. It was released last month. And the report was modeling what would happen if some of the products were withdrawn. Of which some of them will actually be withdrawn starting 1st January.
Oh, really?
About 6 of them, yes.
Okay.
It was a regulatory decision by PCPB to withdraw them.
Okay.
So when you look at what are some of the possible repercussions, there's something known as pesticide resistance.
Okay.
Whereby a pest gets used to that product up to the point whereby it's not affected when you use that.
It's like antibiotic resistance.
Yes,
exactly. Resistance.
They are one and they are the same thing, but now in different organisms. Yeah.
And so we really have to then lean heavily on the side of science and regulations to be able to make evidence-based decisions. Exactly. Fantastic.
Yes.
I think we've learned something. And that's been a sort of really good dose of knowledge. I don't want to overwhelm our audience with too much. I feel like we need a part 2 to sort of just dig into other areas of concern that the public typically has. And I think what we'll also do is maybe ask, what else are people concerned about? What do people want to hear? So that our conversation is also driven by addressing public concerns. So it's been fantastic. I think we've had a really good conversation, and we're coming to the end of, but before we do that, I'd love to hear like your sort of final take or parting shot on this pesticide conversation, its use and its relevance in Kenya and in the region in general. I'll start with you, Doreen.
This, as I'm thinking as a lay person, after talking all these things, then is food that I'm consuming safe? I might want to ask myself.
That is the question, ultimately.
Yeah, are these pesticides really helping us in a way? And I would like to say that food that has been grown with pesticides is generally safe.
Okay.
Very safe.
Okay.
When the regulations are followed and good agricultural practices, that will mean how the farmer uses the pesticide. That will mean the food will be safe when the food is generally safe when the farmer does the part, the regulators, and also as consumers, we have our parts. Washing those fruits, peeling some which need to be peeled,
Yes.
that is also our part.
Yes.
So pesticides are not, as bad as they're painted.
Okay.
When used well, they can bring good outcomes, and we are able to go ahead as a country.
Coming from a toxicologist, that's very reassuring. And I also like that you said, and for me, it's an issue I always push, personal responsibility. All hands on deck. You don't just fall back and say, this is up to. We all have a part to play in ensuring that our food is safe. She talked about something that maybe our steward can wrap up.
Yes.
Good
Yes,
agricultural
practices.
practices. You have been the guy on the ground doing the extension, and but you're still doing that to an extent when you talk about stewardship.
Yes.
Our farmers are adhering to this processes that have been put in place. Yes, no. If no, what are you doing to ensure, or at least to try to see that they do to the best of their ability?
Okay, I won't answer it as a yes or no,
Okay,
but I'll give.
fantastic.
And
We said there is no yes, and
I'll let the
gray
audience.
area,
I'll
tell
let the
us.
audience understand or take their information from our discussions.
Okay.
So, as we previously talked about, the pesticides are heavily regulated.
Yes.
And all that information that is gathered by the regulator is summarized and put on the label. The label is a legal requirement.
It's a legal requirement.
You cannot just put any label on the pesticide. So all that information that is required to use this product safely and effectively and sustainably is placed on that label in English and in Swahili. Just to be sure that everyone is yes.
Do they read the labels?
Yes, they are supposed to.
Okay. So that's human nature that again
nature.
is beyond.
Yes.
Okay.
So coming to my point, all that information has been supplied to the user, and what I see from our interactions with farmer, it's more of a behavior change that needs, and an attitude that needs to be corrected by the public. You'll go and meet a farmer, they know what is supposed to be done, but they don't do what is supposed to be done. So it's kind of an attitude as opposed to a knowledge gap.
Okay.
The dynamics have shifted. The demographic for the farmer, or the age of the farmer, is slowly coming down.
Yes.
There was a time it had gone to almost, you go to any farmer's meeting, you are talking to 60-year-old people.
It's a retirement gig.
Yes. So slowly it's starting to come down again.
It's okay, that's fantastic.
When you look at social media, the kind of farmers who are engaging, yes, the demographic.
Plug, but
yes, they are good examples.
Good examples.
So as it's coming down, we need an attitude change that will follow and take into consideration all these things that are recommended for the safe use of pesticides. They are out there, the requirements are out there, the personal protective equipment is out there, the good application is out there, including even nowadays drones for application. The technologies are coming in, motorized pumps,
that excites
the
me.
spray service providers.
Yes. Oh, so what are spray service providers?
This year, the PCPB Act and the regulations were reviewed.
Okay.
So they made some tweaks to update from the last review.
Okay.
And one of the changes was that they recommend that a spray service provider is someone who has been trained to apply on behalf of the farmer. So if you don't have the PP, you don't have the good understanding of pesticides, you don't have a good application equipment like the knapsack or whatever, you can hire someone to come and do the application. So you see, it removes that guesswork from the farmer.
And another safety check.
Yes.
For those who don't have access to some of these.
And they'll advise you on when it is safe to harvest.
All right.
It has also, the regulations have also brought the question of the agro dealer. They have to have a certain level of knowledge so that they can advise the farmer.
I almost feel like high-fiving. Because that's been my other question. That when I go to a pharmacist and it's a requirement, you're the pharmacist, you can tell us that you have to be a trained pharmacist registered pharmacist to dispense drugs.
Yes.
And so you're saying that you're now taking this same
to agri-retailers.
Yes. So that is now the area we are going to. As enforcement starts, we'll now see more professional recommendations going to the farmers. And the only thing now that's remaining is for the farmer to change their attitude, and we'll be safe as a country, we'll secure our agriculture.
We are safe as a country, and like you said, there's safety measures and checks
already
have been put in place, and there's work to be done. And I think it's not just unique to pesticides, agriculture, mindset shift, behavior change. It's there. It's there, and it's work that needs to be done. I was having a conversation with Doreen, I think with you earlier, where we were talking about antibiotics and how people misuse antibiotics in the country. And that's not to say then that let's stop selling antibiotics, because we know the effects that would come out of that. And so let's not be very quick to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly.
Right? Enforce regulations.
Enforce regulations.
And do the right
all
thing.
have a role to play. We all have to do the right thing, from the farmer to the regulator, to the consumer. All of us, the onus is upon us to ensure that the food that we put on our tables is safe. Fantastic.
And enough.
Very important. Sufficient
To sustain
us as a nation. Thank you so much. It's been such an exciting conversation. To our viewers and listeners, unfortunately, everything that has a start has an end. We've come to the conclusion of this exciting conversations on use of agrochemicals in farming, and I hope you've taken something away from you. We hope you've gotten some valuable insights into crop protection issues. If you still have any questions, we want to invite you to get into our digital platform, www.africidedialogue.org. I think the link is going to be put at the bottom in the description box, where if you sign in, you can still be able to continue this conversation with our experts, who we are going to get to register on that platform for continued engagement. I've been your host, Bibiana Iraki. Till next time, goodbye. Have a lovely day, and thank you so much for your time.
Welcome.
This is Africa Science Dialogue, where science meets society.